All right. Let's make sure you can hear me. Welcome to Feedback in the New Frontier. This is breakout session 2. If this is where the breakout that you chose, you are in the right place. It looks like several people here in this session, about 27 participants, including me and Dr. Greer. So thank you guys for choosing this session. We're glad you're here. I'm Amy Duke, and I'm going to be the facilitator for this session. Your presenter today is Dr. Janet Greer, and she is a consultant at Middle Georgia RESA. She does a lot of work with leadership and instruction for our organization. So Dr. Greer, thank you so much for being here today. Thank all of you for participating, and we're going to go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Dr. Duke. Good morning, everyone. Good to see some familiar faces, and some of you I don't know, but we are looking forward to being with you for the next hour or so to talk about something that we know has a huge impact on our practice, and that is feedback. Dr. Duke, if you would go back one slide. I want to turn on everybody's creative juices this morning. And so I want you in the chat box to tell us who you are and where you're from. But you have to do it like Dr. Duke and I have done it. So this morning I'm going to be jumping Jupiter Janet. And I work at Middle Georgia RESA. And our driver this morning is Aurora Asteroid Amy. So
I love the alliteration.
Include that. I see we have kicking up her heels Karen with us. So please do that and we will know who you are and where you are from. We are all aliens from our own world and we're coming together this morning to learn about feedback. So if you'll do that, we will appreciate your alliteration and we will appreciate
Boy, you must have been asleep.
Make sure that everyone mutes your mic. Okay, Amy, can you hear me? Are we good?
Yes, we're good. I was going through and muting individuals as they come in. No offense to anybody, but we do ask that you keep your mic off during the presentation. If you have questions, just type them in the chat box, and there will be opportunities for you to turn your mic back on and interact with us throughout the presentation. So I love some of these comments that are coming in. We've got Happy Haley Hope Solomon from Doherty County, Jiving Jamming Jennifer. There's lots of them. You guys are great with the alliteration this morning and with the alien names. That's fantastic. Silly Sarah, Peppy Payton. So awesome job with some of the names that we see coming in.
Great. Okay, now we're going to move through this. I hope everyone has a piece of paper. I'm an old school teacher and I believe in paper and pencil. So if you need to be scurrying around, any kind of piece of paper will do. We're just going to make a foldable here in a couple of minutes. Dr. Duke, if you want to roll us on through. Elon Musk recently did something or was able to put together something that we hadn't seen in a long time. And those of us who grew up in the race to the moon and remember that, that was a very exciting thing that happened in the last, I guess, month or so now. But I think all people who are pioneers recognize the importance of having a feedback loop, some way that you know how to get feedback. And this idea, this notion of constantly thinking about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we could do it better. So I thought this was an appropriate quote to use this morning from Mr. Musk in that regard. Feedback, as Brooke Hart tells us way back, this is research from 2008, describes, or Brookhart describes feedback as needing to be just in time, just for me information delivered when and where it can do the most good. And Hattie and his group have used some of this research in their visible learning research. Back after World War II, Deming, and we began to think of the idea later into the 90s of just-in-time manufacturing. When we need something is when it is manufactured. So I think that that's a good thought for us to frame feedback for. If I get feedback too soon, I can't use it. If I get feedback too late, I can't use it. And I think that's the challenge for coaches, for administrators, for lead teachers, for anybody who's trying to give feedback. So let's frame our brains around how can we give this just in time, just for me feedback. There are 4 kinds of feedback. And this work came out of some training that I took from the DOE 4 or 5 years ago. And I want to share with you, and I hope that you will learn today in today's session, how we are going to learn to give diagnostic feedback, prescriptive feedback, descriptive feedback, and micro feedback. So if you'll find your piece of paper, I think we have another slide, Dr. Duke. If you'll find your piece of paper and fold it over, you want to fold it lengthways, and then you want to fold it again sideways, and make yourself a little foldable. I'll give you just a minute to do that and to get your pen or your pencil in front of you. And remember, you can use the chat box if you need to communicate with any of us. Dr. Duke is going to try to watch that.
I'm not seeing any questions. I see a couple people I can see on their camera. They're working on their foldable, Dr. Greer. They're folding it long ways and then short ways to make the quarter fold. So,
okay. So now when we open up our paper, I hope we've got 4, depending on what size paper, either 4 squares or 4 rectangles there to write in. Now, what I want us to do this morning is we're going to learn, or I'm just going to give you some information. We're going to take about 10 minutes, and I'm going to give you some information on these 4 types of feedback. And then we're going to show you a video. And what you're going to do is try to cite examples of the different kinds of feedback in the little coaching video. Okay, so are we ready? Let's go to the first one. Diagnostic feedback, research will tell us, identifies the root cause of why something is or is not working. Now, on your piece of paper, on your square, you can abbreviate this. You're going to have a copy of this presentation, so there's no reason to copy it verbatim. But I do want you to capture what I have captured here in color. And that would be that diagnostic feedback helps us get to the bottom of why something is or is not working, the root cause. It helps teachers understand more fully why they might be struggling with a concept. So it helps them understand the struggle, and then it does what? It's here in orange. It clarifies for them the expectations for their future performance or the core principles that should guide their work. I'm gonna let you get this information copied down. You might want to do it in bullets, whatever works for your learning style. This kind of feedback is best used for those who are struggling because they lack an understanding of the key concepts involved in the work that they are doing. So if you are in a professional learning situation and you are teaching teachers to do a particular something, let's say ask more probing questions, and then you happen to try this, but your questions aren't probing at all. They are yes, no kinds of questions. And you go into the classroom and you've all been working on probing questions, and you see that the teacher's only asking yes, no, very short answer questions. What is the capital city of Georgia? Then you can clarify for that teacher the expectation that the probing question might be a little deeper. When was the capital of Georgia moved to its current location? And then you have follow-up questions that are going to clarify for your student, which is the teacher, the expectation. If the teacher is struggling because they don't understand the key concept of the kind of question they're supposed to be asking, you know, chances are they're never going to ask that kind of question. So you really, on diagnostic feedback, you really want to help the teacher figure out why it either is working or why it is not working. We certainly don't want to abandon something that's working, do we? Because that brings us to our best practice that we can replicate when we know what works. But if something's not working, you want to get to that root cause. So do you think that you have been able to capture this definition now? Okay, you can use your little thumbs up, I think, or now what I want you to do on this page before you leave this little rectangle is I want you to draw a picture that represents diagnostic feedback. And for that picture, I have chosen a tree that has what at the bottom? Roots. So you've written your definition, draw you some kind of little roots, some kind of little tree in that diagnostic quadrant. Dr. Duke, are you seeing some trees appear there? If you have your cameras on, hold your feedback up. I mean, hold your little picture up so Dr. Duke can see that somebody's participating.
Most people have their cameras off, so I'm not able to see, but I do know we have at least one artist in the room, an art teacher, former art teacher. So I'm sure
Okay.
Peyton's is great so far. If that's Peyton Proctor. All I can see is Peyton on the screen, but yep, I got somebody holding one up now. It looks good.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen Weiler. Good to see you. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go. If we think we've had enough time, let's go. And you can say slow down if we're going too fast. It's really hard to read your audience when you're in some other hemisphere over there from me. You're a long way away. Okay, so let's go on to the next kind of feedback. And this is prescriptive feedback. And prescriptive feedback is designed to help teachers understand what they should be doing differently if they want to be more successful. So in blue here, this blue-gray color, what they should be doing differently. That is the prescriptive feedback. This kind of feedback helps teachers understand options that they have to improve and what to do next. So sometimes you might be talking to a teacher and they are stuck. I give the kids the reading exercise, I give the kids this task to perform, and I really don't know what to do next. As their coach, you might have to try to help them, excuse me, understand their options. Well, you could divide into small groups. You might want to bring the whole group back together for a discussion. You might want them to do something independently. You know, there could be examples, there could be times when you have to coach somebody through particularly transitions and what to do next and how things might be improved. This type of feedback is best suited for those who have tried something unsuccessfully and they need specific help or direction to improve. Now, who has tried something unsuccessfully in front of a class, that has been unsuccessful in front of a group of people? My goodness. How many times has this happened? I see Peyton is saying she's not the artist over there. That's okay, Peyton. No pressure here.
Yeah, I think we've all probably tried something that didn't work. I can speak for Risa. We tried something yesterday that didn't work, right?
Yeah.
So we have to regroup and keep moving forward. So yeah,
You
lots
know,
of people.
And that's a great example, Dr. Duke. There was another Zoom meeting after the failed Zoom meeting yesterday for everybody to talk about what options and what to do next. And we tried one thing and something didn't cooperate, so we had to go back and reboot and try again. And I think as teachers, we can all relate to that.
Yes, that's what we do, you know, and I think we have to not be afraid to try something new. You know, you can't be afraid of failure because, you know, if we're truly in a growth mindset, I think we're always working of how can we get this better? How can we do this better? How can we improve our practice? You know, and so we try to stay in that growth mindset.
And I think one of the problems that we have with feedback and when we're trying to give feedback to teachers, some people just want you to fix the problem. They want you to come in and tell them exactly what to do to fix the problem. Well, how I fix the problem might not be how Dr. Duke fixes the problem, or Miss Mitchum, or Dr. Weiler, or whomever. And so when you help teachers understand options, to me that builds their capacity, because what works with one group in one class might not work in another group with another class. So make sure you've captured on your page prescriptive feedback. And this is designed to help teachers understand what they should do differently to be more successful. Help them understand their options. Now, the graphic here is going to be what? Of course, a little bottle of pills, a medicine bottle. So draw yourself a little medicine bottle. You can write whatever you want to. Take one daily or take one as needed. You can put yourself a little label on there if you want to do that. You know, that's how Dr. Duke and I'll know who our gifted children are. It's by the amount of detail they put on their drawings.
There's a great comment in the chat box while you're drawing from Peyton, who's not the artist, Peyton. Sometimes it's hard not to jump in and fix things when we see a problem. As coaches, we need to be able to help teachers identify the problem and help them come up with potential solutions collaboratively. Because again, I agree, you know, we're building their capacity when we do that. It's a great comment there.
Yes, thank you, Peyton. And that is just so true because that's the quickest way to fail as a coach, isn't it? If you tell them, go in there and tell them exactly what to do, and then it falls flat. That is just a
Yeah.
disaster.
Because they'll say, well, I did what you told me to do.
Exactly.
You know,
You said
and
this
it's
was
your
what
fault
you
then.
Yeah. you
Right.
said-
It becomes your fault.
Okay. We gotten those two kinds of feedback now. So we have our diagnostic, we have our picture of our root, that one gets to the root cause. We have our prescriptive, and that's where we're looking for options. Okay, now this one is going to be familiar to a lot of you. And there are a lot of words on here, so you're going to have to write kind of tiny on your little boxes. But descriptive feedback. This is perhaps the most common. It's what most of us have been trained to give. And what do we do with descriptive feedback? We give detailed descriptions of performance. When I came in your classroom, there were 10 of 12 students who were on task. You had written the objectives on the board. The students were following the guidelines. You see, I'm just detailing exactly what they did, right? I'm giving detailed descriptions of performance. What is that basically like? Holding a mirror up and clearly showing teachers what they did well and where they might need to improve. Now, here's the problem with this. This kind of feedback is the one we use a lot, but it generally works best, or it only works well for those who have a good foundational understanding of what the expectations are. So if I come in and retell and describe for you what you did, but you really don't understand what you were or weren't supposed to be doing, is this really going to be as helpful to you? Now, if you understood what you were supposed to be doing, for instance, let's think about a play like in basketball. And we've got a play called A52. And I call play A52. And as the point guard, you're supposed to go to the right and you went to the left. Yeah, then I can describe for you. And the next time you know when I call A52 that you need to go to the right because you understand the play, you understand the expectation, you just made a mistake. So that descriptive feedback might work in that case. And a lot of times it will work for teachers if they have a good understanding of what's supposed to happen. And here's the main part that's sort of in this red color. If the teacher has the capacity to be reflective, this one will work. But if a teacher can't hold up that mirror and be reflective, all the description you give them in the world is not going to help, is it?
Dr. Greer, can I interrupt
ahead.
for just a second? We have a hand up. Karen Weiler, if you want to turn your mic on and ask your question.
No, I put that up there to agree a while ago.
Oh, okay.
I guess I didn't take it down. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Just wanted to make sure if you had a question, we stopped and answered it as we go along.
No, you're being a very clear communicator. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Weiler. It's good to see your face and to hear you this morning. It's always, we're always glad to see you and have you with us. So, you know, this one, guys, teachers have to have this capacity to be reflective. And once you are reflective, then you can make adjustments. However, it's not effective, or it's not as effective for anyone who is still struggling to understand or implement the basics, or if a person just simply cannot be reflective. And there's some reasons for that people can't be reflective. You know, sometimes it's hard for us to see ourselves as other people see us. and teachers feel like, hey, I've got this going on. I've got good test scores. I've got 20 years experience, blah, 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 blah. And that's really difficult for them to see that they might be missing, that there might be a gap there somewhere. So make sure on your descriptive feedback that you've captured the idea of the detailed performance, the good foundational understanding of the expectations and the principles. Real important one, put a star by it, capacity to be reflective. And that it probably won't work if the teacher doesn't understand the basics. Okay, now, what do you think we're going to draw for this one? There you are. There's your mirror. Draw yourself a little mirror. You can put your nice little smiling face in it, or you can draw a little alien in there for this morning if you want to. I'm going to pause and give you just a little bit of time to be creative here. Okay, do you have your mirrors? All right, Dr. Duke, let's go to the last kind of feedback. Microfeedback. Microfeedback works best with teachers who have already demonstrated a degree of expertise. And you have lots of those. You have lots of people who will take something that you're trying to teach them, to incorporate, and they will be able to demonstrate expertise in that area. Small nuances, tweaks, minor adjustments that will significantly improve an already good performance. This kind of feedback adds value and it keeps teachers consistently growing. Now, Dr. Duke is helping me watch the time here. I'm talking too slowly, and so I'm gonna have to speed up a little bit so we can get to the rest of this presentation. So speed up a little bit on y'all now. You ready? Okay, so have you captured in microfeedback the idea that there's an expert performance? You want to give them small tweaks. I call this polishing the apple. What do you do to just help it shine just a little bit more? And this really gives value added and helps those teachers validate their practice and keep improving. Okay, here you go. Here's your little what? Magnifying glass. Because this is something you're going to look for something really little that's going to help them. Now that one's not hard to draw, y'all. You can draw that in a hurry.
I love how for each part of this foldable, you guys are going to have a picture to remind you of the key points. And also you copy down those key points for each of the types of feedback. So that's going to be great.
Because they're going to need that in just a minute when they watch this video. Okay, are we ready? Let's move on now. So Hattie tells us that we get a 0.74 effect size on feedback. And that's a wow. That is a wow. So we really want to understand the importance of feedback and these 4 different kinds of feedback. I'm hopeful will be helpful to you in targeting what certain teachers need at certain points of the lesson or whatever it is that you're observing. All right, so now, Dr. Duke, if you will, this is what I want you to do. I want everybody to take out your phone real quick. I know you have it there right beside you. And I want you to take a picture of what you just did. And I want you to text it or I want you to share it on Facebook, or I want you to put it on Instagram, or I just want you to save it to your photos so that you have a copy of, hey, look what I learned in class today. So everybody take just a second. It doesn't take you but just a minute to Instagram that or something, and capture what you've done with your 4 types of feedback. Because I really do believe this is going to help you when you start trying to help teachers with feedback.
If you put it on social media, tag us. Tag Middle Georgia RESA. That'd be awesome. Be great to have a reminder of what you learned in this session today. It's good to have a takeaway, you know?
Great way for kids to communicate with their parents what they're learning at school today too.
Yes, good point.
Always trying to model good things and try to find productive ways to use these cell phones in class. Sharing pictures, I remind myself quite often with pictures that I have on my phone.
And if you don't like yours as much as you like Dr. Greer's, you can always take your phone and snap a picture of hers. That's what I would probably do. All right.
Okay,
Are you ready?
All right, guys. Now what we're going to do is, I think Dr. Duke next is our video. Yes. Okay. Now let me just very briefly tell you, we have an alternative preparation educational leadership program at Middle Georgia RESA, and we call that APEL. So this is one person who has just finished APEL, and this is an assignment that she turned in. And we're going to watch 6 minutes of Ashley completing a post-conference with a team of 2 teachers. Now, the lady who's not speaking is the instructional coach who was Ashley's mentor through this process. Okay, does everybody understand? So script a little bit. Dr. Duke's going to start the video, script a little bit, and when we come back, we're going to try to give examples of, was it diagnostic, prescriptive, descriptive, or micro feedback, or was it a little bit of everything? Okay?
Can y'all hear that?
I cannot, Dr. Duke.
Y'all could not hear that?
I couldn't.
Okay, let me stop sharing and reshare.
All right, thank you. Thank
Is
you.
that better?
Yes,
For the
much better.
several questions that you all had a lot of class discourse. You were talking with the students, and you were answering their questions, but I didn't hear a lot of questions from you all to the students as far as how can you check for understanding to make sure that they are understanding those problems as they're working. You did.
Oh dear. Let's try this again. I was trying to make it where it would be.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Recorded several questions that you all had a lot of class discourse. You were talking with the students, and you were answering their questions, but I didn't hear a lot of questions from you all to the students as far as how can you check for understanding to make sure that they are understanding those problems as they're working. You did, like I said, you answered their questions, but I didn't hear questions from you all. So talk to me about that, because it could have just been that day. So how do you all normally, how do you interact with the students? How do you question them? How do you scaffold their learning?
It depends on the class, and it depends on the atmosphere of the class. Because some days they come in hyped up and more unlikely to interact positively. and other times they come in open to that interaction. So it really just depends on what we're discussing and what I'm seeing as I'm walking around. Because sometimes if it's close, okay, so what do you think you did wrong here or something like that? But if it's, way out, okay, we may need to, let's go back and look at this and that kind of thing. So
I can give you an example. You did
Okay.
I remember you had one I thought was a great question, but you didn't really elaborate on it. So
Okay.
at the beginning, towards the beginning of the lesson, you talked about what does variability mean, and you said what happens if there's more variability. Is it less accurate? Is it more accurate? That's a great question.
but I didn't allow them
But
to
you didn't give
answer.
them time.
Gotcha.
You you posed the question, and then you kind of hurried on through it. And then sometimes I heard you ask a good question, Ms. Butler, but you answered your own question. So I'm not saying that I didn't hear questions. I didn't hear many questions, but I did hear a question. But you Ms. Dixon, you hurried up through it and you answered your own question.
Okay.
So let's think about how can we work towards questioning the students
And giving them time.
and giving them that wait time to answer your questions.
Yeah.
If we're not cognizant of it or we're not preparing for it, then it won't happen. Or unconsciously, you'll hurry past it, or you'll like ask and answer. You ask a question and you're
Which doesn't
answering.
help them at all.
Right. So what can we do? How do you think we can address that? Because I think you all can come up with great questions.
Yeah.
We just need to prepare for it.
Yeah. So maybe as we're planning, we need to come up with questions at that time
Yeah.
so that we can, and have those with us as we're moving around the classroom. So when the opportunity presents itself, boom.
Ask a question.
Yeah.
So do you think we could, like let's say for example, on those, how you had 6 questions, which I didn't think was too many, or it was a great number. Could you, when you work them out, think of a question and maybe write it in the margins? And that way when you get to each group, like if this group is on number 2, you already have a question there. And so then it's already there. Okay. And probably like even on your summary of learning. So what could have been a question you could have asked on that summary of learning to help them understand the question? So that question yesterday was, how do the two dot plots overlap? What could have been a question that you could probably ask the students to get them thinking, to kind of scaffold them on that question?
Do you see any dots that are on the same number in both graphs?
Right. And then maybe even talk
we
about
actually did that today.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that
We went back to it.
You went back to it,
first
right.
block that we were gonna go back to.
Right, okay,
And we did
okay.
go back to it.
Okay. Was
And so
it
that's-
when you went back? Did they understand?
They did.
Okay.
And I did like you had talked about doing while writing the numbers out and letting them see the numbers.
Numbers.
That.
Okay.
So we did that.
So I think we had, I think what I heard you say, we're gonna try to come up with and it doesn't have to be, I'm not saying come up with a long list. Let's start small with something that we can do, that's reasonable. So let's just try to come up with a question. When you all work out your task problems, let's try to come up with at least one question.
For each one. Okay.
And then you'll have it already in your notebook or your clipboard. And when you move around, if this group is finished, let me ask you a question. What does this mean?
Yeah.
That brings me back to another, I heard, this is another strength. I heard you all, we had talked about vocabulary. And I did hear you all using the vocabulary. I heard you asking, what do the lines mean? How does the box and whisker plot look? What's that long line? Because they were saying it's a line with dots. And you were making visuals, and that's great. But those are whiskers. And that would have been another opportunity for a question. What determines the length of the whiskers? What does a long whisker mean? What does a short whisker mean? So it doesn't have to be a long question. It can be a short question that gets them thinking about it. So they kind of have that process in mind when they look at the next problem. Oh, this whisker's a little longer. This whisker, because in this standard, they're comparing.
Right.
So they got to be able to look and see what's in common, what's the same, what's different. So I don't want you to think when I say come up with a question, it's got to be this long question. It can be short questions that kind of scaffold their thinking.
Work the best. Because by the time you finish a long question, they're like,
Yeah, glaze over and they lost it.
yeah.
So start.
Okay, guys. So what do you think? I'm gonna give you just about 30 seconds to process some of that. And I want you to go back to the chat box. Dr. Duke, I think we have one more slide that'll help us with the sharing out. So I want you to put on all your little alien antennas there and chat us up in the chat box. We probably won't have time to get to all of those comments, but I do want to capture them. This session is recorded, so you can go back and read with some of your colleagues. This is one of the difficult parts of online learning, is to be able to process all the things that are happening in front of us. But raise your hand. Bring yourself back on if you want to share out an example or two that you heard there.
Somebody be brave and speak up. What did you hear? Share what your reflections from the video. There's some things in the chat box that you heard a lot of prescriptive and descriptive. I would certainly agree. Anybody hear anything diagnostic? When there was a discussion at the very beginning of the video about questioning and that they were asking the right kind of questions, but what was the one teacher doing? Answering the question herself. Mm-hmm. Teachers often do that. So that was a little bit diagnostic. That was telling her why it wasn't working, right?
I said it too when she said, I didn't hear from your students.
Correct. That's an excellent example there. I did not hear what the students were saying, because who's supposed to really be doing the learning? It's the students. Mm-hmm. Get so caught up sometimes as teachers doing all the telling. So Lindsay's saying yes, diagnostic at the beginning. What about the little discussion at the end of the whisker plots? And they threw in that little bit of information about the whisker plots, and then Ashley was offering them some feedback in regard to saying that was a whisker plot. You should have used that opportunity to talk about that. That was getting close to the micro, wasn't it? Because the teacher had clearly done some work with the whisker plots and had kids using them and understanding them. She just forgot to bring it back around, and that one little tweak might have helped, you know, cement their understanding of it. So what we're hopeful, guys, this morning is that by teaching you and showing you the 4 different kinds of feedback that you have at your disposal, that we can begin to train ourselves to target what the teacher needs to hear. And I think good coaches, I was very proud of Ashley. I appreciate her giving us permission to share this. She's learning to be a leader and to give feedback. And I really appreciate the way that she did that and her letting us share this. So that's your challenge this morning, should you choose to accept it. It is not a mission impossible. It is certainly a mission possible to go in and give teachers specific feedback and really put yourself in the moment.
Mm-hmm. And do it in a way that is non-evaluative and non-threatening. You know, I think that the role of the coach is not evaluative, you know, and sometimes teachers take it that way. You know what I mean? So, you know, the way that you present yourself and the way you ask those questions, I think really determines how it's going to be received from the teacher.
Right.
And I think Ashley did a good job with that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Duke, for beaming us up with that. So if you want your feedback to be out of this world, you have got to be sure that it's timely. It has got to be just in time to make that difference. Dr. Duke just mentioned this. It has to be user-friendly in the approach and the amount. You know, a sponge can only absorb as much as a sponge can absorb, no matter how good the sponge is. So if you just inundate people with too much too fast, you're really going to overwhelm them. The feedback has to be specific in regard to performance, because performance is what we're after, guys. And so you have to train yourself to listen and give specific feedback in regard to the performance. And sometimes that's in the form of a question. You need to be sure, if you want out of this world feedback, that it's consistent and that it's expert. Now, what does that mean, that it's expert? It doesn't really mean you have to be an expert in every single thing, but you have to be relying on a research-based instrument as well. You have to know what you're talking about when it comes to reading strategies, when it comes to whisker plots. You have to build up that efficacy piece so that the teachers know that you know a little bit about what you're talking about, or that you're going to help them. The feedback has to be accurate. If Ashley were your coach, was there any doubt that she was in that classroom listening to what you were doing from that conversation? Absolutely no. No doubt. She was in the room. She was taking copious notes. She had example after example, didn't she? It was honest, and yet it was constructive. Did you see the teachers nodding as they left? We didn't quite watch all the way to the end of it because just for time, but they were in agreement as they left that they knew what they were going to go do to change practice. It was related to the standards, and it clearly is ongoing. And that comes from Grant Wiggins' early research back in 2005. Seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? All right, Dr. Duke, let's move on. I want to get to some of these other things before our time is up this morning. But really, you know, guys, don't you do the best feedback when you're up and you're walking around? I think that there are some reasons that we give feedback and we want to make things better. But a lot of times our presence is our present too, because teachers want that connection. Somebody mentioned in the chat box about relationships. That's how you build relationships, is you are with people. But really, a lot of times things are for compliance, and compliance is not a bad thing. If your district spends X amount of millions of dollars on something, we really need people to be compliant and be using the product or be using the procedure. We need to communicate. We need to try to build consensus. One big word that I always want to push with people is building capacity. You have to be able to build the capacity of all teachers. And of course, we want them to do it with a sense of commitment, not just compliance. So you've been sitting for a minute. We're going to get up and we're going to walk around now. Okay. So I need everybody to get up, and I need you to walk around, and don't walk too far because I'm going to keep talking. Dr. Duke, if you'll go ahead and hit the next slide for me, please. There are all kinds of little walks that you can do with if you're going to get up and walk around. So get up and walk around to some picture that's hanging on your wall. Where's your gallery in the room where you are? And a gallery walk is where you are going to group teachers or group participants according to the task that you want them to see. So if we have instituted a certain vocabulary program, we're going to go as a group. This can be a lot of different variety of activities. We're going to hit high yield strategies. It allows for movement and conversation. Now we know we have to be socially distancing correctly, but still you can stand 6 feet apart and move and walk around. The teacher can either be a part of the gallery walk or the teacher can facilitate it. But what we're doing when we're up walking around is we are teaching the behavioral expectations. And then you as a group need to decide what feedback should we give people? What feedback should we give people? So now if you'll walk back to your seat, gallery walks is one thing we can do. Now, Dr. Duke, take us on to the next kind of walk. This is one of my favorite kinds of walks. And you can keep walking if your back needs you to, or you can sit down, but the ghost walk is one of my favorites. It's not really scary. Just think about Scooby-Doo. You know, that ghost wasn't really as scary as Scooby and his friends thought. But this is the walk where you take and you go in and you have a seat. You sit yourself down as if you were a student in that classroom. What is in that classroom? When nobody else is in that classroom but you and the teacher that you are coaching, what is in the room? What do the students see? What do they hear? What do they smell? And you're like, Janet, why are you talking about smelling? Well, you know, that's the sense that we remember the most, guys. Think about this when you're thinking about back in the day when you'd go to your grandmother's house for Thanksgiving and you would open the door. Can you smell that smell? You know, and so all of those things are important, aren't they? What is the kid? What's the vibe that the teacher is seeing, or that the kids are seeing, hearing, or smelling? Focus on the physical environment. Any safety issues or clutter, or what are you wondering about? Are the walls talking, or are the walls screaming? Now, who do you think it would be beneficial to sit there and look at that? Guys, I taught design for a long time, and you're supposed to have in every room what's called a resting wall. And your resting wall is where your eyes can go to rest just a minute. I guess in classrooms, that should be the whiteboard if we ever erase it. But sometimes I go in classrooms and there is nowhere for my eyes to rest. It's constantly being stimulated. So what questions do you have that might be able to help teachers, and what feedback might you be able to give them? You know, if there are 500 anchor charts on the wall, you know, they might have lost their value. So let's think about the ghost walk. Dr. Duke, let's get on to the next one. I'm trying to watch our time here. Capacity building. This is when you're going out and you're looking for data. You're looking for implementation. And guys, we all said we were going to do PBIS at our school. And so now we're going out and we're seeing clearly our rules posted. How many kids are doing this? How many are doing that? We're gaining insight into our next steps. Who might want to do these walks? Maybe it's the principal, the AP, the coach, the lead teacher, the teacher. Anybody can go out and do a capacity building walk. But we need to think about, what do we need to tell teachers and what would our next steps be? Because if we sit and we ask you to implement something, we've got to know what kind of data we're going to use to collect. That's okay. Go ahead, Dr. Duke. The faculty learning walk. I love these. Sometimes when you're in a PLC, it's good just to get up and go on a walk. And the entire staff participates. I don't care if you're teaching 6th grade. It's okay to go observe a 7th grade room. It's okay to go observe an 8th grade room. You can still learn some things. The school-wide implementation of vocabulary strategies. Whatever you said it was. You can play a little game. Nobody has to say a word. I spy with my little eye. And then you write down some implementation of whatever it is that you're looking for. What questions do we need to ask? And oh, how important are the open-ended questions going to be? So learning faculty learning walks might be a good thing that you want to do with your staff. The next one is this curriculum business. Do y'all struggle sometimes with curriculum business? Well, curriculum walks or curriculum audit walks, is there a need to walk through and check for curriculum alignment? The short answer is probably yes. You probably need to be focusing on curriculum. And sometimes administrators struggle with this, so you as coaches might need to help them. There's got to be a clear alignment between the standard, the learning target, and the success criteria. We've got to know what evidence looks like and what exemplars look like. Is there a need to walk through and check for pacing or maybe vertical alignment? Think back to that faculty walk I was just talking about. How powerful would it be for 6th grade teachers to see the English classroom in the 7th grade? Or for the 3rd grade teacher to see what they need to be able to do in 4th grade? And we don't always get to see that. And so I think that curriculum audit walks and thinking about vertical teaming would be a really good thing for us to do. All right, the next walk is the IRR walk. Now this is important. I know I've got to talk fast, but if you are charged with coaching teachers up to help them on their evaluation, you have got to understand TEKS and you've got to understand what the evaluators are looking for. When we do IRR training, there's a little acronym we use. It's called having your oar, as in your paddle, having your oar in the water. Is the evidence objective? Is it aligned to the standard? And is it representative of the teacher's work? And so you want to make sure as the coach that your teachers are providing the evidence that the administrators are going to have to use according to the TEKS instrument. And so how do you do that? You've got to walk around with those administrators. And I think coaches, sometimes this is your challenge because we administrators often think we have all the right answers, but we might not understand what reading strategies really look like or math strategies that might be appropriate in 6th grade. So what kind of feedback is the teacher going to need from you? Here again, be careful not to be so descriptive and tell, because if you say it and then they get marked down by the administrator, we're really going to have a problem. So think about walking there with that group. All right, Dr. Duke, let's flip on through this. This is the part about the written plans. This cannot be underestimated. You are paying teachers to write lesson plans. They've got to get feedback from their plans. Lesson plans are certainly a measure of compliance, but they really need to be a demonstration of collaboration and commitment. And so somebody's got to check those plans, and that takes a lot of time. That takes a significant amount of time. Who's doing that? What about other documents? If you're talking about DOK levels of test questions, who's checking the test? Because if you're not inspecting what you're expecting, there's going to be a problem. Okay, next, Dr. Duke.
So I was muted, sorry. Can I give a little testimonial real quick about lesson plans? I just want to go circle back to that if we can. Because,
Please.
you know, I was an elementary school principal for over 12 years. And for the first probably 5 years of my tenure as a principal, I looked at lesson plans, but I didn't really give feedback on them. It was really more of a compliance thing just to make sure that they were there. But then when I moved to a different district and we got a new superintendent, she required principals to check 5 a week and fill out a feedback form and turn it into her, to the superintendent. And that bothered me because I looked at it as, I've got one more thing to have to do. I don't have time for this. I know they're doing them. The lesson plans are for them, not really for me, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But being forced to do it opened my eyes. It made the biggest impact on instruction in my building because I was able to see why the writing scores were such as they were because I had teachers who weren't teaching writing. You know, I would look through their plans and I would say, wow, she's going to spend 4 days on a video of this. Is that the best use of time? Or I was able to see the activities that teachers were assigning to their students, and I saw that we had an alignment issue in some places because what the teachers had planned to do didn't exactly line up with the standard. So just the fact of me sitting down for a couple of hours a week, looking at plans, giving feedback on them, changed instruction in my building more than any other strategy that we had tried in terms of school improvement. So I'm a believer now, and when I work with schools and I talk to administrators and principals, I say, are you looking at their plans? Or are the plans just compliance documents? Because if they're not planning meaningful activities that are aligned, you know, a lot of times it is an alignment issue and not an instruction issue. And we said that in the Coaching for Clarity session with Mr. DeWolf, if you were in that session a little while ago, but it really sometimes is alignment. It's not that they're not teaching, but is what they're teaching aligned to a standard? Is the activity aligned with it, and so forth? So I just wanted to put that plug in there for lesson plans. It's very powerful. Yes, we can share the lesson plan feedback form that I used in a district. I didn't
Yes.
come up with it, but the one that we used, I'll be glad to share it.
And
Yes.
Dr. Duke, somebody also put in the box of a big difference it had made in their districts to start checking those lesson plans. And you know, you have that relationship with teachers. Teachers didn't like it when the superintendent said that administrators were going to have to start checking their lesson plans. It's like, what? But you know, and I'm not going to jump on this horse, but I could get on this bandwagon about this collaborative planning. We spend a lot of money, a lot of tax dollars to pay teachers to plan collaboratively. And who checks those plans? Who's checking that? How good, let's move on because this is time and Dr. Duke's going to boot us out of the Zoom. How good are you at creating those open-ended questions that cause teachers to relax? You see the little aliens here are relaxed, reflect, and justify their choices in a non-threatening way. I think that's the piece, that's the relationship piece that you have to have. But guys, if you're really going to give that just-in-time feedback, if you're going to give feedback that's really meaningful to move teacher practice forward, you have to ask some of the tough questions. And that's your charge. Walking away from this, what kinds of questions can I ask to make sure that teachers are making good, informed instructional choices? Because I do believe, and Dr. Duke believes, that is where you're really going to get a lot of bang for your buck. Do we have one more slide here at the end, Dr. Duke? Yes. So one of the most important aspects of navigating our work in the new frontier has got to be what? Feedback. And if we teach teachers this kind of feedback, do you think this might also translate to the kind of feedback we need to be giving our students to get better? You see, I really believe that this whole idea of diagnostic, prescriptive, descriptive, and microfeedback will work for anybody in any situation. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, I hope you're ready to blast off into a great year. All the sessions are recorded. I think that we've got just a little bit of time left, maybe for 30-second questions if somebody has something before Dr. Duke has to boot us and we go to the next session. A couple of resources there if you want some more information about walkthroughs. But we appreciate your time. Thank you, Dr. Weiler. Sometimes we are definitely out of this world.
Great. Are there any questions before we close out today?
Thank you, April.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone for your comments in the chat box. We appreciate that. Thank you for choosing to come to our session or Dr. Greer's session today. I was just the driver in the background, but thank you for letting me kind of butt in and speak every now and then. So we appreciate you, Dr. Greer. Great
Thank
session.
you, Asteroid Amy, for your help, for getting us. All right.
There's one comment about going back to the ghost walk. Do we have time to do that?
What was the question? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. It says in the chat box, can we go back to, can you turn on your mic real quick and ask us your question? Not sure who that was. Let me scroll back up and see.
Oh, she wanted a picture. It was from Susie.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Thank you guys so much. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things. You will leave this meeting and go back to the Launchpad, and there is a link for the main meeting room. You need to go back there immediately because at 11:25, we're going to start our next general session, which is actually a panel discussion with administrators and instructional coaches from across Georgia. So you don't want to miss that. Go back to the Launchpad and find the link for the main room, and that's going to begin at 11:25. I'll see you there. Thanks so much again for being here.
This is Jumping Juniper Janet, and we're off. See you later.
Bye.